Right, we'll give folks a few minutes to sign in. And in the meantime, if you want to let us know where you're tuning in from in the chat, that would be awesome. Also, what you're drinking, if you've got something in your glass. I noticed we had some registrants from around the world. I think there was someone from Finland and some parts of Canada. Kind of neat. Always love to hear about where people are from and what they're drinking. All right, let's get this started. Welcome everybody to Winemaker Dad's, a Father's Day celebration. I'm Julia Burke from the Willamette Valley Wineries Association. Joining me today are three excellent panelists: Bryan Laing from Hazelfern Cellars, Jerry Murray from Project M, and Thomas Savre from Lingua Franca. Gentlemen, I would love to get us started by just asking each of you to talk a little bit about how you became a winemaker, a little brief background on your winery, and how long you've been a dad. Bryan, you want to get us started?
Yeah, hey guys, thank you so much for having me. Hey, Thomas and Jerry, good to see you guys. Yeah, I'm Bryan Laing with Hazelfern Cellars in Newberg, Oregon. And I actually got into wine a little bit different route. I just grew up in a family that really appreciated great wine. And I went to college down in Southern California, had moved up here to the Portland area and was actually working for Nike, which is based out of Beaverton, working in the shoe business and their marketing division coming out of school. And that was in 2003. And at that time, I was living for my first summer with my aunt and uncle who live in Beaverton, and they had this amazing wine cellar. And so every night we were just pulling amazing bottles. And again, this was like my first summer out of school. And so, you know, you don't have any bills or no responsibilities. And so I was like, man, this is just amazing. Every night we pull amazing wine, we cook great food, and really started to fall in love with wine that way. That same aunt and uncle, they have had a long-standing wine tasting group that's met here in the Willamette Valley for over 40 years. They got together every single month, and so that takes you back to some of the the beginning times of this wine region. And so my aunt and uncle knew a lot of the OG folks, and so I just started kind of hanging around with a lot of those guys and doing tastings, and just fell in love with it. And in 2006. Some of those guys were like, hey, you should start trying to make your own wine, and we'll help kind of guide you. And so we started out of our basement in 2006 in a neighborhood of Northeast Portland that back in the 1800s was a big cattle farm called Hazelfern Farm. And if you fast forward, I was working a corporate job and just kind of growing in our basement every single year until 2014, when I had a young cousin who was 27 years old. She had beaten cancer at age 18. She understood that life is really, really short. And so she was off pursuing her dreams in Hawaii, working for an organic farm. And while she was over there, she was setting up for the first day of the farmer market season in Honolulu in March of 2014. And she was in the middle of the farmer's market setting up her tent when a truck actually drove through the market and ran through her tent and sadly killed her. And we got that phone call while we were out hiking at Multnomah Falls, just out to the east of the Portland area. And we went and sat down and had lunch right after that and just talked about the fact that life is so short, and you should go pursue what you love now. Why wait until one day? Go do it now. And so 2 months after that, we decided to pack up our life in Portland and move with our two little girls who were 1 and 3 years old at the time. Our oldest, her name's Adeline. Our youngest is Ava. and they were 3-1, and we found a property to plant our vineyard and start Hazelfern full-time as our commercial venture here in Newburgh in 2014. And so that was our first commercial vintage, and we've just kind of grown ever since that point and are having a fantastic time. We absolutely love it. We love the Willamette Valley. We love the collaboration that's out here. We love this community. It's been absolutely incredible.
What an amazing story. Thanks, Bryan. Jerry?
Yeah, mine's a little less dramatic. Fortunately so. I was a chef who was a recovering academic. I started out, I taught at a medical school, and I realized that academia and me were a square peg in a round hole. I wanted to work with my hands. I had moved to New Orleans to learn stonework or ironwork, and I quickly realized that chefs worked with their hands. So I made my way into kitchens, and I hopped around the country learning regional American cuisine. I was working at a restaurant in Tucson, Arizona, where during the tourist season, we would do wine dinners about every 6 weeks. So developing menus for wine dinners was how I got into wine. New Year's Eve of 1999, a friend brought over to our house a bottle of 1996 Domaine Drouhin Lorraine, and spring of 2000, we moved to Oregon. The idea was not to get into wine. We knew there was a great culinary scene here, but it soon became apparent that I was more interested in the wines where people were drinking with the meals that I just cooked than the meals that I just cooked. And so we weren't doing anybody any favors. So I called all my favorite wineries and I said, "Are you guys hiring for harvest?" They all said, "Yes, we are. Do you have any experience?" And I said, "No." And they said, "You need to talk to ERAF." And so I took their advice. I called up ERAF Vineyards, spoke with Tyson Crowley, who was a winemaker at the time. If anybody's familiar with the history of ERAF, they know that that was quite a while ago. That was 2001. Begged my way into a wine job when Rob Stewart was a winemaker there. Worked there for 2 vintages, started hopping hemispheres, and then sort of landed into full-time winemaking gigs in 2005. And that took me all over the Willamette Valley, eventually down to California, where I realized that like vines, winemakers also have soils and climates they thrive in, and mine was definitely the Willamette Valley. So we moved back to Oregon in 2016 to launch Project M.
Thank you so much. And Thomas?
Hey everybody, can you hear me? Good. Yeah, my name is Thomas Savre. I'm working for Lingua Franca down in Salem, in the Elambi Hills. And we started this project here with Larry Stone and Dominique Lafont in 2015, our first vintage. And, build a beautiful winery and on the, 66 acres property. So it's a long ride. It's been so much fun. So I can't wait to talk about those baby vines with you guys and everything. Yeah, my background. So I'm clearly, I'm from France, and that's where I grew up. Like Jerry, I actually was in medical school for 3 years. My parents are in the medical field. I was pursuing this kind of career, and they told me, you know what, it's just like, should probably think about something else at one point, because I was not really in love with this. And they were like, there's not much what we can, give you to basically build a clinic or something. I was like, okay, let's rethink that a little bit. And then I loved wine. My dad is from Burgundy, connected with a lot of really great vignerons. And then I just went to college and I studied 2 master's degree and a bachelor in viticulture, and then had the opportunity to travel and did my research in California, where I met my wife, who's American. I mean, really important when we talked about, being a father without a wife. It's complicated at this time, but so anyway, we decided to, Amy's from Arkansas, and we decided to move to Oregon. Really loved. I was very fortunate to try some wine from Oregon during one of my internship. So I opened a 1995 Christum Marjorie Vineyard at Domaine de la Ramone et Conti when I was interning there. And it was just like one of the best one I've had. So then I met Steve Dorner, I met a lot of people here, and then I decided to settle and pursue my winemaking career in Oregon. And I love this place. I think it's just, as my two colleagues, peers mentioned, it's such a beautiful place, so much like life, so much, it's such a great region for growing, Pinot Noir and other grapes, as Chardonnay and others. So, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. I love hearing about how everybody came here as well. It's always interesting stories. I asked you all to bring something to drink, something in your glass that has significance to you as a dad. I'd love to hear what you're drinking. Jerry, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm actually drinking our 2018 Sentient Pinot Noir. We make a wine every year. We call it the Caro series. And the idea is we want to mark the passage of time, either in sort of society or personally. In 2018, our son, Ford, arrived. And so I wanted to make a wine. And the idea with the Caros is that we take abstract ideas and we try to make them into wine. And sentient is the ability to feel. And so I played on that. So you'll notice this is cell division. So I wanted to think about, basically the moment that life begins and becomes sensitive to the environment, but also a play on words that as a father, you get a whole host of feelings when your wife is expecting a child and when the child arrives. So sentient is about my children in a very literal sort of way. And some of this wine, Ford had his feet dipped in. So we sort of baptized him in one of the fermentations that this wine was made from.
That is too cool. Jerry, I always love hearing your stories behind your wines. And folks, if you don't follow these guys on Instagram, all three of them have really cool Instagram presences. And I know, Jerry, you post a lot of your musings about the wine world and philosophy. And I always think that it's really interesting and you have a really cool perspective. So
You're the one that reads it. Great.
I do.
Yeah. I always wondered, who's this one person?
No, they're great. It's always something new and something cool. But yeah, I expected nothing less from you for your dad wine. Bryan, what do you have?
I'm actually drinking a wine that we haven't released yet. It's a 2019 Pinot Noir from the Yamhill Carlton AVA. This will be a wine that's going to come out for us next fall. And it's a special wine because we are naming this after our two sisters. So I believe that we're going to call it something along the line of sisters. I don't have a label on it yet because we're trying to figure out exactly what we want to call it, but it's going to honor Adeline and Ava. And it's really unique because this is a vineyard, Yamhill Springs Vineyard out in the Yamhill Carlton that was planted in 1988. And it has a block that's out there that was originally planted to Chardonnay, which is my absolute favorite wine to make is Chardonnay. And so this block was originally planted to old Winty clone Chardonnay back in the 80s. And at some point it was grafted over to Pinot Noir. And unfortunately, those grafts only took halfway. And so this entire block has vines that actually send out shoots that are, some of them are Chardonnay shoots and some of them are Pinot, all from the same vines. So every single vine, there will be, many canes that are Chardonnay or a cane that shoots Chardonnay and then a cane that shoots Pinot Noir. And so we have actually picked and identified the Chardonnay on its own and the Pinot Noir on its own. And those will represent our two daughters. And so sisters from the same exact mother vine. And that'll be a release for us this year that's coming out.
Oh, wow. That's so neat. Thank you. Thomas, what are you drinking?
Yeah. So I opened a 2016 Lingua Franca estate. The reason why is I mentioned that a little bit earlier is whenever I started at Lingua Franca, 2015, our vineyard was not producing yet. So 16 was original vintage for us. And there's so many stories I can tell you, but what I can tell you is a lot of people discouraged me to make the wine because they were like, well, it's the first crop, it's not going to be good. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? I need to make wine. So I really treated this to me as, really fresh out of kind of school and my very first experience as taking care of a project at this level. I really, really took that as a baby. And the reason why I'm saying that is my daughter is, she's 15 months right now. And And I realized that the way I had to take care of this baby vine in order to produce fruit, they were really acting as really very babies at this time, and it was so much fun. So I think what I can tell you is I'm very proud of what this vintage and this vineyard gave us the first year, and I'm very proud of having put a wine into bottle. And I think it's been showing really well on many aspects for our brand. So yeah, baby vines make great wine.
What a cool milestone. Congrats. That's great. My next question for all three of you is, if you plan on your kids helping out with the winery, if they already help out in some way or help out, and what you hope they take from the experience of growing up in a wine environment. Jerry, you want to start?
Sure. So my daughter, we started bringing her into the winery fairly early on. When I was, in fact, she too was baptized. She was actually born during harvest. So I actually was able to dip her feet in a fermenter of fruit that was picked the day she was born. I don't recommend any winemaker ever have a kid during harvest. And it was 2011, so it was the latest harvest ever, or at least at that time. And as she got older, we would bring her in. Mostly she wanted to sort of drive the forklift, which, as it turns out, 2-year-olds can't do. But she would sit on it and act like she was driving. And then when she got old enough to sort of help out, she would do so. Amazingly, if it was sort of something that she thought was fun. We actually took some of our fermenters and painted them with chalkboard paint so that she could come in and draw on them, so that there would be something there for her at the winery if she needed to come. What we found is that as she got older, she was less interested. And what I've learned from other winemakers who have had kids that have not wanted to get into the business is that they were sort of pushed into it. And also my experiences in Europe, where in Germany, the idea of inheriting your parents' vineyard was almost like, oh no, what am I going to do with this vineyard? So we don't want to sort of burden our kids with the idea of the winery, working in it. Hopefully she'll come around to it at some point. I think when they're young, it just seems like a lot of work, and you're always working. And then our son, he's going to be 3 next week. He's just too young. We couldn't bring him into the winery during the pandemic. So he has spent very little time in the winery, but we're hoping to get him in this year to do it. What I hope they come away with, it's probably less about wine making and more about us being winery owners. We want to serve as an example of sort of, follow your passion, take risks and go do it. And so we're hoping that whether they go into wine or not, they at least go through life with an idea of, dancing to the beat of their own drum and going after the things that inspire them, as opposed to always playing it safe. Not that there's anything wrong with playing it safe, but at least it's a choice for them.
Bryan, what about you? Do your girls help out, and what do you hope they take from this experience of growing up this way?
Yeah, they both do. So our oldest, she'll turn 10 here in a couple weeks, and then youngest is 7. So they're starting to get more involved, and especially the youngest. It's really interesting to see how just kind of where their natural passions lie. So when we do harvest, for example, the youngest is constantly wants to be involved, wants to have her hands in the grapes, wants to help sort fruit. The oldest is a little bit, more she's not as naturally into, the grape process, but she is an amazing salesperson. So, one day that'll be a great trait. And so maybe one day she can lead a winery or do whatever she wants, because like Jerry said, this for us, this was our passion. And so, ultimately I just hope that, they pursue their passions, whether it's wine or not. Like we certainly won't force them to do that. But it is exciting to see just some of that natural interest that the youngest has. And then I think as far as like what they take from the experience growing up in the winery, when we were first starting our commercial projects back in 2014, we were lucky enough to go to a dinner with Maria and Rob Stewart. From our Stewart, and ran into those guys at a dinner in Portland, and kind of shared with them what we were doing. And at that time, they have 3 kids, and they were kind of coming up through junior high and high school at that time. And so Maria shared with us just how unbelievable just the experience of having the kids grow up in that culture has been. And so that's something that we have always been very excited to raise our kids in, is this idea of a global culture right here at the winery. And so, you know, wine is a global thing. We see people here in the Willamette Valley. It's on the map around the world. I mean, I know we have a lot of folks from around the world on this call right now. And so there's a lot of attention here in the Valley, and therefore we see a lot of people come from other cultures. They come from around the world. Wine is this universal language, and they come sit at the table with us and get to meet our kids. And so it's a really neat way for our kids to experience other cultures and other ideas, you know, all because they're being raised in this culture of wine. And so we're really excited for that.
Absolutely. Tama, I'm sure Emma is already running the forklift. And,
forklift, tractor. She just spread, you know, she helped us like doing you know, pruning, everything. Yeah. 20
anything
months,
with like sharp objects, right?
yeah. 15 months baby vine nursery. No, it's, well, you know, it's like where for me, it's like I think, you know, I'm super happy to hear what those two great people and father has to say, because, you know, I'm coming from Europe. There's a sense of like, well, people have generation, you know, winery to the other. And I've met, you know, with Dominique Lafont, and it's happening right now with his daughter and his nephew. And some of my friends, when they were like right off college, they were going to do something, and you know, they're like asked to go to the winery and work. But for me, I mean, you know, it's like obviously she doesn't help. There was a pandemic last year. You know, I think, you know, I want her to be exposed. You know, I value a lot. I think, you know, one of my big thing is I would like to learn about, you know, the vineyard and understanding how things are growing and why, and what does it mean, and why do we do this. And keep in mind that, you know, I think wine industry, it's a fascinating industry because it touches history, culture, international culture, you know, I mean, you know, food and you know, and even, you know, businesses, and it's like in every country, and it's fascinating to me. So I hope that, you know, she will be somehow interested, because you know, it's when it's become a passion, it's a passion at home and you know, during vacation and stuff. So, you know, but we'll see.
I forgot earlier when I asked you all what you were drinking to mention what I'm drinking. It's Ridgecrest 2018 Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, my dad's favorite wine. My dad's favorite wine is any Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, and that is not just because I am who I am. I actually got him on that train years ago when I was teaching a class in Chicago. But this particular one, I was thinking about Wynn and Harry Peterson Nedry, Wynn, who was on our winemaker mom's call, and Harry, who, you know, asked the question that prompted this webinar. And I was just really enjoying this wine, wishing my dad was here. I got him into wine. He was not really a wine drinker before me. And in return, my dad's gotten me into a bunch of things that have nothing to do with wine, reading, baseball, running. And I'm curious for you guys, what skills that are not wine related you hope your kids grow up with? Either you're teaching them or you want them to take lessons, or is there anything that you have in your mind in terms of like other skills that you hope they grow up learning? Bryan, you want to start?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I think for me, one thing I love, I grew up with parents that had a business, you know, much like our situation, not wine, but just having a business. And I feel like just being around that really taught us the value of hard work and going out and creating. And I hope that our kids take that away. And I think that, you know, the biggest thing is learning confidence. So it's really fun to see them, you know, be around the property, be in the vineyard, be in the winery, and just develop skills and confidence and how they get to meet new people and introduce themselves with confidence and you know, really go out there and tackle anything confidently. I think that's having confidence is a skill that I think it would be, you know, I sometimes I think about like what would be a skill that would be amazing for everyone if I could just wish everyone to have, and confidence is one of those things. I think that, you know, so many challenges that we have around the world are because of a lack of confidence. And so, you know, I think being raised in this environment, again, learning how to be in the vineyard, how to be around people, how we sell and market our wines, being a part of that, you know, hopefully gives them confidence as they head out in the world.
I love that. I love that you said that, and especially because all three of you are the dads of daughters. I love seeing in this generation women being raised to be young women being raised that confidence is a good thing, something that it's good to project, and this not being a gender specific trait, but something that everyone can benefit from. I love that. Jerry, what about you?
Yeah, the confidence thing, I think, because of my daughter, especially her mother, I don't think she's going to lack confidence any. And so I think confidence is great, but it has to be balanced. In order to keep it from becoming ego, it needs to be balanced by humility. And that's really our approach with Project M, is to, we're at the mercy of the season. And so this idea that, whatever, we can do this, there's a lot of optimism, but at the end of the day, we have to deal with raw materials and we have to deal with a tremendous amount of uncertainty. And so I think, being able to sort of build their confidence and their humility and sort of an embracing of uncertainty, because the one thing that I'm pretty certain about the future is that it's going to be at least as uncertain as the present. And there's a lot of that to go around. So if we can prepare them for that, and also interdisciplinary thinking. I think, as a winemaker, you're multidisciplinary. And then as a business owner as well, you become sort of, unrelated fields collide in very major ways. And so I think no matter what field you're in, being able to sort of bring seemingly disparate ideas together is a great skill to have. And so I hope they walk away with that as they grow up through this and then go out into the world.
I love that. And what about you, Thomas?
Well, of course, I mean, if Emma can be confident, humble, interdisciplinary, that would be great. I love this. Of course, Amy and I, my wife, are gonna do our best. To me, I think there's a couple of things. The last few years was reflecting a lot on what happened in the world at many levels, and then I think respect some things that is very important. That I wish we're gonna really try to make sure she respect herself, respect other, respect nature, respect of a lot of things, and also I just want her to understand that there is a it's probably linked to confidence and of course humility, but being a dreamer. But it's I came to this country here because I wanted to make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, because one of the owner of the most famous winery in the world sat me down and said, "You're not going to make Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in Burgundy." And not because I don't think you can, it's because I think you should do it there. And I think this country, the way I came in the US, I found people in America to be somehow dreamer. And that's what I love about you culture in a sense. So, if you can ally dream and respect, can make something pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Okay, this is a question that I also ask the moms, and I love hearing different responses to it. And I'll start with you, Thomas. What skills from winemaking transfer to fatherhood, and what fatherhood skills transfer to winemaking? Does being a winemaker make you a better father, and vice versa?
Well, sleeping. That's great. Is
it sleeping or is it valuing sleep?
Well, I'm gonna be very honest. For me, I'm what I've learned. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but it's not. I don't sleep too much, which is not great. When Emma was, about to come to the world, I was like, I got this. The sleep is gonna be if there is something I'm not gonna have any problem with, it's just sleep, because I know that I can handle this. Well, I got it wrong completely. So humility right there. Okay, I got wrong it. And Emma is a great sleeper, but still it's you change the world. So, winemaker, why I love harvest. I love that. I love the chaos of harvest in a sense. I love when it's busy, and I love for me, I love this. I love to be close to the tanks. So for sure that helped, and then I think what I'm learning is the interesting thing with Lingua Franca is that I heard these two, and Jerry, and they've started the business, and I think they're in good maturity of their business now. And I think for us at Lingua Franca, being a little bit younger than them, I was the first employee here, so kind of a baby, and I'm growing up with the business. So I'm learning a lot about all this being a kind of in this business, growing an enterprise in the wine industry, how sales work, all the challenges, and I think that's going to help me quite a bit. As Emma is growing, to just understand like how I'm going to be hopefully a good dad for her.
Bryan, what about you?
For me, my wines, I often talk about them like they're my kids. Mm-hmm. And people, we do a whole different series of different single vineyard designates, and in the tasting room, people always ask, oh, well, which one's tell us which one's your favorite. And truly, you don't necessarily have one. It's it depends on the day. My kids are sitting right over here, so careful. It depends on the day. And for wine, it depends on the weather, the food that you're having, the friends that you're with. Each one of those wines is totally different. And what I have found as a winemaker is, where I think that they are like my kids is, as I learn a vineyard, for example, that first year you start working with a vineyard, it's kind of this exploration. It's like this new baby, and you don't quite know what it's going to be. And then over time, it's like this relationship, and you start to kind of learn how to work with it, and you learn what that vineyard is about. And early on, when I first started making wine, I would try and maybe take fruit and make it how I wanted to make the wine, rather than thinking about what is this fruit from this particular vineyard want to be. And for me, that's just like children. When your kids are born, you might have a vision of exactly what you want them to be, or what they're going to be when they grow up, or this or that. And at the end of the day, they're their own person. And so it's really learning to lean into their skills, their interests, their passions. And for the vineyard, it's taking the strengths of the vineyard. When I'm making wine from a certain vineyard, I try and look at what is this vineyard about? What makes it really unique? And let's lean all the way into that and support that thing, because that's what makes it special. And so let's let it be its own person and support it the best way we can. And we often talk about, as we're raising these wines in the cellar, you go through harvest and then fermentation, and then they're in the cellar. At some point, you choose to blend those wines or bottle them. And I try and raise them the best way that I can. And then once we put them in bottle, they are these living, breathing things, and they go into people's cellars. And we hope that we have set them up to be in a really great place to age really, really well. And hopefully most of the time those wines will mature into great adults, or maybe they won't. I don't know. But you try and set them up to be successful. And for me, it's the same way with kids. We try and raise them. We only get them for a certain amount of time, in their life. And we try and set a great example for them. Again, lean into their strengths and help set them up for success. But, once they leave from here, they're their own people. And so we try and raise them right, and then send them out into the world to go be their own thing. And for me, that's the same between kids and wine.
I love that. Thank you. Jerry, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, what Bryan says makes a lot of sense. And for me, I sort of summarize it as this, sort of this inherent nature. And so if my child doesn't want to be an athlete, nothing I do is going to make him an athlete. And so letting things be. But I think a couple other skills that are more sort of very practical is hypervigilance. As a winemaker, you develop a sort of a super sense that something's not right. Maybe a pump is making a noise, or, for a winemaker, the sound of liquid hitting a floor, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. It sends terror. And as a parent, you develop certain things, and it's usually the opposite. Like, why are they quiet? And so this sense of hypervigilance, that there's danger lurks around every corner, and you need to be ready for it. And the other thing is sort of long-term thinking. I've been fortunate to be in the wine business a long time. I've learned a lot from other people's mistakes. And so I think I kind of view raising children as planting a vineyard, in the sense that if you think about the return on the investment, to put irrigation in after 3 years is more expensive than to put it in when you develop the vineyard. And so we sort of take the same approach with things like education. Sort of let's invest in education now. So, putting the kids into good schools and things like that, they're going to get more out of it. There's a long tail to the investment. Whereas if we wait until high school to send them to the great school or to make that investment, or a great college, we get less of a return. So it's about making the decisions early in the process so that the investment can have a much longer tail and much greater returns. And so it's a very sort of less philosophical, more practical approach to the business, making wine, and raising children.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. And a question that anybody who's got something at the top of their mind can answer first. What is your kind of favorite funny moment of being a winemaker dad? Any funny stories that come to mind, or if you prefer, any big surprises about being a dad for you? And anybody who's got one can start.
Well, I'll probably start. I'll talk about that day Matilda was born.
Yes. That sounds like a good story.
Well, and so first, when we decided that, they set us down and they say, we're going to induce you. They're talking to my wife, obviously not me, but they're talking to my wife, and we're going to induce you. And so my wife says, well, Jerry wants to pick on Wednesday and Thursday. So can we get this done on Tuesday? And so the doctor was like, yeah, we can bring you in on Tuesday. Usually, sometimes it'll take a day or two. She's like, no, I want to have the kid on Tuesday. And so anybody that knows my wife knows sort of like she's a planner. And the doctor was like, that's not really the way it works. So we'll bring you in and we'll get going, And so we brought her in, and the first day, nothing happens. And so, and then it looks like the second day, nothing's going to happen. And she could tell I'm getting nervous. And so she just went, she's just sort of irritated by me. She said, why don't you just go to the winery and see how everything's going, just get out of here. And because it looked like we were going to be there for a whole nother day. So I go to the winery, I get there, and everything's running great. They don't need me. Basically I'm useless. And so I get back in the car and I'm heading home, and I get a phone call, and they're like, where are you? And I'm like, well, I'm coming back from the winery. I'm heading to the hospital. They're like, she's ready to push. You got to get here. And so then I get there, and, her sister was there. And so, she's pushing, and, it's mayhem. And I realized that I'm not, all I do is, try to comfort her. And there's no way to comfort a woman during labor. And so I just realized, how futile and useless I was in both my personal life and my professional life. Like that day, nobody needed me. I added no value. I created these problems, but I had no solutions to any of them. And so that's how I started off parenthood, was sort of this feeling of like, wow, what purpose do you serve in this process? And on that particular day, very little. I didn't have much of a purpose at all.
A meditation on our place in the grand scheme of the world. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. For me, it's weird. It's kind of bizarre that this is being recorded, and I'm about to admit this, but so, kids, they grow up, they like to play different scenarios. Maybe they're playing like tea party or things like that. Well, we live here on the property that the winery is at and our tasting room is at. And so oftentimes my wife, Laura, and I are out, working late in the winery. And so our kids have, instead of like playing tea party, for example, they just play wine tasting. And so, that's fun. They set up the whole thing. We do all seated tastings here in the winery. And so they set up the entire thing. They know this is where we put all the glasses, and this is where you put the wine list. And, one of them will come up and provide service to the other one. And so one day we go in there and they're in the dining room at the winery playing wine tasting. And the oldest is pouring glasses of wine, like real wine, for our youngest, who was like 5 or 6. And she's just drinking them. And we were like, oh my gosh, like, you stop, like you can't, like, that was fun that you were playing it, but you can't like actually pour glasses of wine for a 5-year-old and have them drink it. And then anyway, right after that, the youngest is literally out on her bike, like going off of this big hill with training wheels, like just out of control. Like it was wild. It got a little crazy. So that was a good lesson for all of us.
Oh,
As the older of two sisters, I can definitely like relate to the like, okay, I can explain this whole thing. It's not what it looks like. Actually it is, but it was her idea.
that's something that's I'm sure that's gonna happen eventually, since we're gonna have another girl in December. So I'm sure they're gonna be like boom, 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 cheering and everything. But no, for me, it was like the funny thing is my obviously, like, you know, before we knew my wife was pregnant for number two, we're just like, you know, winemaker, we like to drink wine, we hopefully, but I do. And then we're like kind of having dinner, and then Emma is like, we really try to have like dinner with her, and it's always fun, just like eat with her and trying to like, she's 15 months, she eats with a fork. I didn't even know that was a possible thing. But anyway, sometimes she does sometimes she just likes to throw the food as well. But what we figured was she was getting her sippy cup and just like moving it around and doing and I was like, didn't understand. And then my wife, she's like, I mean, she's like the mom, intuitive and thing, and she's like, I think she wants to cheers. And just like boom, and then she's like, and now we cannot drink any glass of water or any glass of anything without cheering her. She loves to cheers. So now I need to teach her santé, because obviously, you know, we try to like teach her French and English. So I think it's pretty cool to see how they evolve. And for us, that was really funny. But you know, I have some juicy stuff, but it's like, it's a little too, you know, she's 20 months, you know.
Come on, did she swirl the sippy cup?
What's that?
Did she swirl her sippy cup?
She's not swirling yet, but she definitely, like, I'm teaching her how to like, no, not yet, but she's like very interested in the wine glass. So we have to be careful, because I bought this fancy glass, very light, very breakable. She liked to sniff, because she look at us and she's like, you know, that's very funny. Definitely wants to drink. So, you know, I hear you loud and clear. I think this is going to happen soon. You know, the legal age from drinking in France is a little bit like younger than in the US. So, you know, but still, you know, 7, 10, we'll see. I can wait to see Emma, like, you know, but she's definitely interested in wine. That's for sure. At least wine bottle.
I remember back in New York, my home wine region, hanging out with a winemaker friend, and his kids asked if I wanted to have a tea party, and they've got tea in their cups, but they were definitely like swirl. And one of them goes, "Oh, apples," and the other one's like, "Oh, it smells like apples and pears." And I just really appreciated that they had like accurate Riesling stone fruit profile for New York State winemaker kids. I would love to take at this time any questions from the audience if you want to pop them in the chat. Oh, this is a great one actually from Emily P. Is there anything about the Willamette Valley that you want to preserve or enhance for the next generation? Anybody want to take that?
I mean, I think for me, yes, and so much of it. And so it's a beautiful place. So we want to preserve that sort of the natural beauty. And I think Oregon is very much a part of that, just the way sort of land use is set up. It's more difficult to destroy it than it is to maintain it. But there's a cultural aspect to the Willamette Valley that I hope, and I do see it changing, and I expect it to change. And I think everything evolves. And so I'm not somebody who wants to like freeze time and say, when I got here, it was perfect and it shouldn't change, you know, any beyond that, knowing full well that when I came, I brought a small amount of change as well. And everybody that comes to Willamette Valley does that. And so, you know, there's a unique culture about this that until you've worked in other wine regions, you can't fully appreciate. And people who have worked in other wine regions that have come here see it and realize that there is something about the Willamette Valley that is very special and very unique culturally. It's a wonderful place to raise kids. That's why we came back from California. And, you know, sort of the spirit of cooperation, also that spirit of, you know, sort of what Thomas talked about was anything's possible. You know, it's the last refuge of sort of the wild-eyed dreamer. That's what the industry started on. People who were underfunded and overzealous And I hope it continues to be a place where the underfunded and overzealous continue to come and create, whether it's wine or anything else that adds to quality of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else have any thoughts to add to that? Come on.
Oh, I was punching Bryan.
You're punting.
I was like, hey, Bryan, come on, say something.
No, I mean, I totally agree with Jerry. I think that, it's one thing that's really cool, and we hear it all the time from people that come visit our valley, is just that the spirit here is totally different than other places that they go, and just that collaborative spirit is something that's really, really special. And I hope that's something that is maintained even as we evolve. I mean, evolution is certain to happen, but I just hope that valuing people and valuing the lands and taking care of the lands, like I hope that spirit here in the Willamette Valley is something that remains even as we grow and there becomes more attention here. I think everything that Jerry said is spot on.
Absolutely.
Keep the French coming. That's my point. I'm just joking, but it's like, it's good. I mean, for me, it's like, it's part of what I was saying before. It's like the amount of respect. I mean, I don't know, collaborative effort. And even, I know Jerry's right. Like, you can see people unfunded overzealous that just made something amazing, but you also see, I think it's also fascinating to see like other larger wineries that comes and just like trying to respect the place and do something. And I don't, I feel like it's, I don't know, I felt really welcome here. I felt like not a stranger. I feel like I'm part of a great community. And I think, I worked in California, and I love California for many reasons, but I also decided to make one here and make my home and family for our kids here. So we, I hope that, respect for the land, respect for the people, it's going to keep going here. Yeah, for sure.
All right, last question, I think, guys. What is the best or most memorable piece of advice that you got from either your dad or a dad figure in your life?
I think, and it's something, I read something recently about, and I find myself doing it a lot, trying to sort of, impart wisdom to my child. And I don't think that's the way they get it. I think they learn it by watching. And the thing that I learned from my dad was the value of a daily practice, whatever it was. So, when I was a kid and we were playing baseball, we were out there playing catch every day. And it was, the idea of, you don't get better by thinking about something, you get better by doing it daily, and sort of preparing yourself. And so that's what I've learned from my dad. And, the things that I hope to teach my kids, I'm now thinking less about how do I tell them this and more about how I show them this.
For me, Dominique Lafont, Larry Stone, don't F up. That was pretty easy. That I could understand. And it said, make the best you can. It's my dad. I think it's an untold something. My dad and I left my house. I left my hometown, and I left my country. And they've been, the fact they just let me do this was, for very, very. I think I cannot imagine. I'm having kid now. I'm like really thinking about what they've done, and knowing that with the pandemic, my parents didn't even meet my daughter yet. So I want to say a big thank you to my dad and my mom as well for that, because I think that's pretty tough. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's I think that being raised and taught to be a leader, but lead with a servant's heart, and be here to serve others. A leadership style that I really want to teach our kids, and how they go about in the world is, set out to lead by example. and don't burn bridges. Like, treat those relationships like gold, and you're here to service others. And if you're not out constantly looking for what's in it for you, but how are we all helping each other get better or grow or learn, that's really the best way to do it. So it's something in the winery that we talk about all the time, and that is that we're in service every day when guests come and have tastings, and we are here to give our all and make a great experience, not only for guests that come, but also for our team that's here, and help people get better and advance their career. And anything you do, it's just leading with that servant's heart, leaning in and giving it your all to make other people better.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. This has been a lot of fun. If anybody has any final thoughts, should I give you a moment? You guys are also philosophically inclined.
Well, happy Father's Day for everybody.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
Tomat, did you Google and find out what a dad joke is?
I did. And I tried to Google, I don't even understand the joke. I'm sorry. I was like, what's going on? That's kind of my weakness. I don't understand joke in general, but
if it's a really good dad joke, it's so dumb that
there's
not a lot to get.
I Google what is a dad joke in French, and I just found weird stuff. So it's let's just
Thank you for the update.
Yeah, my daughter tells me I can't act. They're not dad jokes because jokes are funny, and so that doesn't keep me from trying.
Tough crowd.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Sorry, I almost said Happy Valentine's Day. Not quite the same season. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you, Julia, for everything.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining as well.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.